Hello, I'm Morgan Freeman. Is Oblivion or Skyrim the best Elder Scrolls game? Yes, the age-old debate that leaves the Morrowind fans fuming over their fabled superiority. Is it the Imperials or the Stormcloaks? The bright and mighty Cyrodiil, or the wintry, gloomy North? Despite my extensive research through countless war-torn, slur-filled forums, this question remains unanswered. And amid this tumultuous debate, it is time for me to weigh in with my 2 cents.
Alright, cut it out, Morgan. Let's get to it. Graphics and visuals. When it comes to visuals, Skyrim is much more rough, realistic, and gloomy, whilst Cyrodiil in Oblivion is much more bright, charming, and nostalgic. Both of these games have their own unique, separate style, but they're so iconic and so signature to one another. Despite that, I prefer Skyrim's rough, realistic, and gloomy look a lot more. Not only that, but Skyrim is a newer game, so it's more graphically defined and detailed, and therefore I find Skyrim much more prettier to look at than that of Oblivion. So this one is gonna go to Skyrim. World design and exploration. Skyrim had very diverse landscapes throughout its game. It varied from anything between green forests to snowy mountains to open tundras. Oblivion was very cohesive and very green and forested, and honestly I felt like you could practically see a chunk of Oblivion and you had pretty much seen it all. Obviously there were, occasional mountaintops and snow and whatnot, but it just did not feel as varied as in Skyrim. And I hate to admit it, but Oblivion was the game I probably fast traveled through the most because of this. So for this one, I'm gonna give it to Skyrim. Character interactions. In my opinion, Skyrim had very plain but also pretty fun character interactions. I really liked the speechcraft variety with Persuade, Intimidate, and Bribe, and it kind of felt like you almost had a hand in shaping the conversation and its outcome, which also made it very immersive for me. However, I feel like Oblivion's character interactions really just kind of blow Skyrim out of the wind.
Wow, you're the Grand Champion. I saw your fight against the Grey Prince. You're the best. Can I follow you around? I won't get in the way.
They were not only very fun, but they were very interactive regardless of you not having too much control over the conversation.
Okay, here's the procedure. Is there a problem?
I was not a big fan of the disposition, but I guess I could really look past that. There's also the fact that NPCs can walk around and speak with one another, and you can pick up on different topics of gossip. And it is also very fun to see different NPCs talking to each other, and sometimes it can clash, but that also makes it fun. One of the main concerns I heard for Skyrim was that in Oblivion people recognize your greatness, while in Skyrim they do not. And I feel like that's a half-truth, kind of. Because whenever I walk around Skyrim, especially the guards, they take notice of different things that I've done or different quests that I've completed.
But like White Mane has been laid to rest, I know. And his soul live forever in the halls of Southern God. You're the Harbin. Psst. Hey, I know who you are. Hey, Sithis. I heard you were at the wedding of the Empress cousin. Solitude. Gods. That must have been horrible. Trouble? They say Ulfric Stormcloak murdered the High King. You look tired, friend.
But you could also talk to someone on the street and ask for work, and they tell you to go and join the companions, when like, dude, I am the companion. Despite that, Oblivion's character interactions are just much more fun, entertaining, much more immersive, much more engaging, and I just preferred it much more than Skyrim. So this one is obviously going to go to Oblivion. Combat system. In terms of combat, Skyrim was very refined, fluid, and it had a very heavy feel to it, which I actually enjoyed. It actually felt like you were swinging a giant sword towards your enemy, and it just made it much more kind of immersive in the combat, for me at least. It also introduced the finishers and the dual wields, which I were all for. I absolutely love dual wielding in Skyrim, and the finishers just made it so much more satisfying. In Oblivion, the combat was solid, but I felt like it was less fluid than that of Skyrim. However, one thing Oblivion managed to capture that Skyrim really didn't have at all was the feeling of actually getting properly knocked back. In Skyrim, you get a camera shake, and that's about it. You can keep swinging your sword as if nothing happened. But in Oblivion, when you get knocked back, you're practically incapacitated for like 2 to 3 seconds, and within that window, whoever you're fighting can get a bunch of hits in and can really drain you of your HP. It made me much more aware of knowing when to block and knowing when to hit in combat in Oblivion. However, I feel like Skyrim's combat, just gameplay wise, was much more entertaining, and therefore I'm gonna give it to Skyrim. Magic system. Skyrim had a very simple magic system, but it kinda owned up for it with the addition of shouts, if you want to count that. I'm counting it at least. The entire concept of wielding a dragon's power through your shouts is pretty fucking cool, but I feel like really it was kinda there where it ended for Skyrim compared to Oblivion. With the addition of spell crafting, it just makes it much more immersive if you're actually going to play as a mage, especially in a roleplay scenario. If you're going to play a mage, you're a scholar, your time is going to be spent studying spells and its functions, and so being able to craft spells just makes it much more appropriate for a mage, and therefore I will give this one to Oblivion. Main story. I'm gonna say it right off the bat, I preferred Skyrim's main story a lot more than Oblivion. Just the concept of this ancient, age-old dragon, Alduin the World Eater, coming back. I don't even know how this guy came back. He just, like, spawned in. And now he's wandering around to different dragon burials, resurrecting dragons. So Skyrim is now a dragon-infested land. And you work together with the Blades to eradicate the dragons, but you also work with their rival counterparts, the Greybeards. Not only that, but you've got several quests like capturing a dragon at Dragon's Reach, and being able to call him with your shouts, and going to Sovngarde. All of those were just much more preferable in my opinion than in Oblivion, where I guess being able to go to the realm of Oblivion is pretty cool, but honestly, like, tearing down those towers were not really a fun thing to do. So this one is gonna go to Skyrim. Factions and side quests. For factions and side quests, I'm gonna have to tie it because I feel like both games had their own side quests and factions that shine through better than the other. I prefer the Dark Brotherhood in Oblivion, but I prefer the Thieves Guild in Skyrim. The Companions I preferred more than the Fighters Guild. It's just very hard for me to pick. I did like how you could see your faction status in Oblivion. That was sort of a cool way to track progress, but it's very hard for me to pick which one I like other than the other. So for this one, I'm gonna have to tie it. Skills, leveling, and difficulty. This one's tricky to choose from. I preferred Skyrim's skill system more than Oblivion's. Not only did I enjoy the UI more, but I also enjoyed the fact that you could put your skill points into different skill trees rather than put them into different attributes. However, Oblivion was much more varied when it came to picking an actual class, any birth sign, any backstory, and it made much more sense from the typical RPG standpoint that Skyrim kinda shied away from. However, I had a big problem with leveling in Oblivion and the balance in Oblivion as well. In Skyrim, I enjoyed multi-classing. It was my way of creating variety. Sometimes I'm playing two-handed, sometimes I'm one-handed, sometimes I do spells, sometimes I do marksman. It's just to make it a lot more fun for me. In Oblivion, that was not the smartest idea. While I was getting better at everything gradually, everyone around me got really good at their specific skill. So I just got completely steamrolled and would have to camp on top of rocks and shoot arrows down at my enemies till they eventually died. And I had to sit like that for an eternity just training my marksman skill till I got to a point where I was average. So that really fucked me over. I just prefer multi-classing much more, and the fact that Oblivion made that harder for me puts me more on Skyrim's side. Music. This is probably the hardest comparison I'm gonna have to do, because I'm a big music guy and I love both Oblivion and Skyrim's music. It's so hard. They're so different in feel, but they're very similar. I love Harvest Dawn. I love Reign of the Septums, especially in that intro cutscene, man. Glory of Cyrodiil. For Skyrim, I love Ancient Stones. I love Far Horizon. And by God, I've gone on walks listening to Skyrim atmospheres. So this is just so hard for me to choose. If I was forced to pick, I would probably give a slight edge to Skyrim, but that's only because of the nostalgic value Skyrim has to me, with it being the first Elder Scrolls game I played. If I were forced to, I'd have to give this to Skyrim. DLC and expansions. I'm gonna be completely honest, I did not enjoy Shivering Isles, nor was I ever able to find enjoyment within Shivering Isles. It's probably a very hot take, but I just could not for the love of God find a way to enjoy it. In Skyrim, man, I loved the Dragonborn DLC, going to Morrowind, fighting Miraak, and then you had the Black Books with Hermaeus Mora, I think. Pretty annoying at times, but it was also very cool. It gave me a very Lovecraftian feel to it. Also, the Dawnguard with the vampire hunters. Don't get me wrong, I love Serana, but some of you guys are sick. Some of you guys have gone too far down that rabbit hole, and I don't want to be a part of it. So that leads me to the conclusion, which is better, Skyrim or Oblivion? And if I'm gonna be completely honest, I'm gonna have to say, I don't know. I do not know. I like both games. Why can't we like both games? There are certain times where I prefer playing Skyrim and certain times where I'd prefer playing Oblivion. It's just my opinion can fluctuate a lot between both of the games because they're both uniquely great in their own way, and I cannot find a way to pick one over the other. So there's my stance. Please let me know what your stance is, if it's Oblivion or Skyrim. Both opinions are totally valid. Oh yeah, I forgot. That leads me to my last and favorite topic, bonus topic. This one goes to Morrowind, and it is on the category of racism.
Filthy Enwa!